Today we're going to look at opening principles that everyone needs to know when they begin playing chess. And the first thing, a lot of players will tell you different things that you need to know about openings. Now, while it is very important to know some openings, you want to be familiar with some of the more popular, the King's Opening, the Queen's Opening, the Queen's Gambit, the King's Gambit, the English. Although it's important to know some of the common openings, it's more important to know the opening principles behind them. And those opening principles are what we're going to go over today. Even if you didn't know any chess opening, if you knew chess principles in the opening, you'd be much better off. And that's what a lot of beginners struggle with, is they memorize these openings and have no idea why they're moving them because they don't know the fundamentals behind the principles, and then they end up struggling because their chess game revolves around memorization of 4 or 5 moves when they really haven't focused on learning how to play chess. So a couple things that you want to keep in mind. Anytime in the beginning of chess, you want to have a few things in the back of your head. First, you want to have center control. You don't want to start out with a move like h4. That doesn't control the center. Second, you want to have king safety. Right now, both sides have king safety. But once pieces start moving around, you want to actually have your king in a safer position than it is now. And we'll go over what that looks like. Now, you will see a lot of abstract moves from a lot of players. That doesn't mean they're the best moves. You want to make sure that you have center control and you want to have king safety. Another thing you want to look at is you would really like to develop your knights before bishops. A lot of people, one of the most common moves you'll see is pawn to e4 is the beginning. You may see pawn d5, or excuse me, pawn d4, but pawn to e4 is one of the most common openings that you'll see. From here, you'll see knight to f3 as the second move, and you'll see this because you normally want to open your knights before your bishops. It's not the most important thing in the world, it's just usually a common thing that you'll see. Most people, you would like to open up your knights before your bishops. Just something to keep in mind. Another thing you want to keep in mind is you don't want to move your pawns in front of your king more than you have to. So let's say you've developed your pieces, you've brought your bishop to c4, you brought your knight to f3. Another thing you want to think about is you want to develop the pieces first to the side that you're going to castle. So if I'm going to castle queen side, it's really not going to help me if I develop all my pieces on my king side, because now I still have 3 pieces on my queen side that I have to move before I can castle. And remember, center control and king safety. So you want to make sure that you're developing pieces to the... Most people are going to castle king side. So most of the time you're going to see people develop their knight and then they're going to develop your bishop. You want to get your pieces center control. As you can see, we have great center control with our pawn and our minor pieces. And now we're going to castle king side. We have great center control, and now we have king safety. But we want to be very careful, because from here, a lot of players make a lot of mistakes, and they'll move a play like g4. This is not a good play, especially if we don't have to. You want to make sure that when you have king safety, you keep king safety. You don't want to move your pawns in front of your kings if you don't have to, because it lets pieces come in here and attack our king. As a piece can sneak in here to h3 and then get to g2 and checkmate our king. You really don't want to do that. Another thing you want to do, obviously we'd like to develop our bishops. We want to get develop our pawns. We want to get our other bishops into the action. So let's say we bring our bishop into the action and then our queen. Another thing you want to do, and that may look something like this. We bring our bishop to f4. Again, black can't move, but he's not moving yet. We're just going over what you may want your opening to look like. We move our queen to d2, and we've connected our rooks. Always know that the rooks work well if they're connected, and they work even better if there's an open file. So let's say one of your pawns were to go down on, let's say, e4. You would immediately want to put your rook on the e file because it's an open file. Now the rook has even more room to go. If a rook is blocked in, he doesn't have a lot of room to go, then he's not as powerful. He's worth 5 pieces, but if he can't move, what good is he to you? So as soon as you see an open file, even if there's a knight in the way, you still want to have your rooks on those open files. They're much, much dangerous, even if they're not an immediate threat. Later on down the road, they will not only support your own pieces, but they'll put a lot of pressure on your opponent. So you always want to make sure that you can connect your rooks early and that you have them on open files. That's very important. Second thing you want to make sure that you don't do is you don't want to move pieces more than once early on in a game. And if you've seen the intro to the Queen's move, it's similar to this. It would be the thought process of, if we start at e4 and black responds d5 and we capture and they capture with their queen, we develop our knight to c3. Now let's say the queen, he's obviously not going to do this. He might, you never know. But let's say he moves his queen to g5. I'm going over principles again. Remember, you want to have principles in your head, not necessarily memorize moves. If he moves his queen to g5, we can now develop another piece, our knight to f3, and we're forcing the queen to move. We're attacking, he's got to move. Now let's say he makes a move like queen to h6. We can now develop our pawn to d4, and we have a discovered attack. We're attacking the queen with our bishop. Let's say he moves his queen to f6. We can now bring our bishop into the game, developing our bishop, getting him more active, and he can't take our bishop because of our knight. So let's say he moves his queen to f5. We can now develop our bishop, our light square bishop, to d3, attacking the queen. Let's say he moves his queen to g4, attacking this pawn on g2. We can now castle kingside. Now if you look at the setup, black has only moved one piece. He's moved his queen. We have developed all our minor pieces. We have center control. We have king safety. We can now move our queen, connect our rooks. We can put a rook on e1. We can control the e file. This is going to be an extremely good game for white. And black's going to be using the next 4, 5, 6, 7 moves, trying to develop his pieces, trying to get some sort of counterplay on the king side, and at the same time trying to get some sort of king safety. So make sure that when you're playing, you don't move your piece more than once if you don't have to early on. So these are some of the things you want to think about. And also, in this example you saw, I brought my king out early for black. You don't want to bring your queen out early if you don't have to. You want to keep him back. You want to develop your knights first, then your bishops, and then you want to have your queen support those pieces in any attack that you have. So these are some of the key concepts you want to think about in opening. You don't want to memorize moves. You want to know different openings, obviously, but more importantly, you want to know principles behind those. So hopefully you enjoyed this, and hopefully you learned a lot. Thanks for watching.